You currently serve on, I've got appropriations, appointments and claims, rules and legislative procedure, and elections and local government committees in the Senate.
And Homeland
And
Security,
Homeland Security.
Transportation, and Veterans Affairs, yeah.
It's enough to keep you busy, I'm sure.
It is one of the advantages that I have, that I really have as a legislator, is that I'm retired from GE, and so therefore I can do the things that I do full time. So people for a part-time salary are getting a full-time senator, and and again, I talking about that particular thing, I've had some criticism about the trips that I've taken, and but what the trips have done, they are a part of what I'm doing on the national level on Homeland Security. I'm doing it on a state level, and I'm doing it on a national level. And a part of that really makes me feel good is I did it under the Bush administration, and I'm doing it under the Obama administration. And I'm recognized not as a partisan issue when it comes to these. And I think that's something that I'm pretty proud of too. And many of the commissions and committees that I serve on, I'm the only state legislator from the nation that serves on these committees. And they deal with the terrorism, they deal with preparedness for FEMA. I just completed that one with, it was a congressionally mandated committee. There were 35. I served with the police commissioner from Boston, the fire commissioner from New York, various emergency management people. And so, in fact, people have talked about, quote, my expertise. And it's kind of weird to say that, but I have been involved ever since 9/11 heavily in the Homeland Security issues. So, but the feeling that I have there is maybe I'm just that little piece of the solution. And I think back when the wall came down. I remember as a little kid when I used to have to get under my desk or I'd go out in the hall and put your hands over your head. And I really thought that when the wall came down, I thought, boy, forever, my kids, my grandkids are never going to have to ever worry about something like this. And now today, we have a much bigger threat than we had when I was a kid, because the threat isn't just nuclear bombs. The threat is that we could have just incidents happening right here in America. And believe me, we have problems right here in America that need to be addressed. And thank God that we've got the military. Thank God we've got the federal law enforcement. Thank God we've got the ability that now everybody is working together with law enforcement to thwart these incidents that can possibly happen against us. We just got a recent alert again, and this is about traveling to Europe. Well, it's you try not to scare people. You don't want the population to be afraid, but at the same time, they have to understand that there are dangers out there. And like I said, we're working together to thwart this happening here, but we can never, ever promise it'll never happen again.
And you've been involved here locally with our regional public safety academy that's
Right.
out at Southtown.
Right.
Talk a little bit about your involvement with that.
Well, it's. I used to say that Graham Richard was probably one of the most visionary mayors that I had ever worked with, and I worked with a lot of mayors both here in our community and across the state. And I can still remember when Graham first talked to me about the Public Safety Academy. I mean, it took him 15 minutes, and he had me convinced it was a wonderful idea, and it fit everything that we were trying to accomplish. It dealt with public safety, fire, police. It dealt with emergency medical services, and it dealt with Homeland Security. And one of the things that we decided from the very beginning is it wasn't going to be, if we were able to get it, a Fort Wayne Academy. It was going to be a Northeast Indiana Academy. And again, the reason for that was we're all in this together. And it was to be a training site for whether you lived in LaGrange, whether you lived in Steuben, or whatever. And instead of having to go to Indianapolis for training, we could be doing it here. And I still think that it's probably one of the most successful things that we've done in the Homeland Security arena in the state of Indiana. Now, the problem we've got, of course, is that because of the economy and everything, things kind of got a little bit tight. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to bring in regional people as far as federal government and so forth to also receive their training here. And of course, that's kind of been pulled back and everything, but hopefully that's what's going to happen in the future. because federal law enforcement every year, they fly down to Alabama or to Georgia for their training. Why not drive to Fort Wayne and be able to accomplish? Because we have here pretty much more advanced things that they do in the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, which is down south. So hopefully that's going to happen in the future. And I'm still working on that. And I'm working with the people out in Washington on that issue too. So,
what do you see in Indiana's future dealing with immigration? I'm sure that's something that has come up a lot for you and in some of the various places. And obviously we don't have a border with Mexico or Canada, but still it's a problem here.
Immigration is a problem. I mean, there's no way that you can justify illegal immigration. And I don't believe it. I don't believe that it should be. But at the same time, you know, the issues that people are pushing and everything. I did a guest editorial in the newspapers here a while back on my own money, by the way. It wasn't paid by somebody else. I paid for my own trip. And the reason is I'm involved with a company out of Washington that on an advisory status of where they're doing the interconnectability, if you will, with local government and the federal governments down along the southern border. And my purpose to go down there was to say, you know, we keep talking about a fence. Is that the answer? Is electronics or drones or whatever? And when I went down there, it was obvious to me it's a sieve. It's almost impossible to go and protect that border from people crossing it. And so my statement in the paper was, we should be looking at more funding of local government. I was in a county down there of 5,000 square miles. I think Allen County is like 600. There are 17 law enforcement officers in that county. And I couldn't believe it. And so when I was down there, though, I had Texas Rangers, I had local law enforcement, there were some feds. But when I was on the border, I felt like I was in Iraq, because every time I would get out of the vehicle, these guys were all standing around with automatic weapons and everything. You know, you sit there and you go, oh, what's this, you know? But I was able to cross over. I actually put my foot into Mexico. It was on an irrigation crossover bridge that's a walk bridge. I saw areas where they can come across. The area that I was on the walk bridge, the Thursday before I got there was 114 pounds of marijuana in backpacks that were on the American side. They had been brought over during the night, and they were supposed to be picked up on the American side, but the cops had got to it first. Now, you know, you could sit there and say, well, why doesn't somebody constantly monitor that thing? When you only got 17 police officers, you rely on a lot on the locals to warn you about stuff. But I think that the federal government should be putting more money into local law enforcement, because the police down there are the ones that are constantly there. Border Patrol, you know, in fact, when I was there and we drove up, Border Patrol stopped. This was before we had the trainload of people with us. It was just the sheriff and I and the Texas Ranger. And Border Patrol pulled up and said, what are you doing here? And the sheriff said, I'm taking my guest from Indiana down to show him around down here and to see what we're going to be doing tonight. And the guy said, who are you? The Border Patrol did. And the sheriff said, I'm the sheriff. And the Border Patrol didn't even know it. And I was fascinated. I thought, geez, you would think that they would know who that was. But these Border Patrols are kids. I met some kids from Gary. That's a Border Patrol down there. I met 2 from Michigan. They've been on there for a year. They don't even know the territory down there yet. And so, you know, I just think that when you've got this situation you have down there, what the best you can be doing is for the locals to be able to do it. But they can't do it based upon their tax base. That's why the federal government, I think, needs to step in. One of the comments that sheriff made to me, his name was Arvin West, by the way, and earlier this year he told his population down there, arm yourselves, I can't protect you. It was a big, in fact, he ended up going on O'Reilly and everything. Arvin West said to me, you know, Senator, he said, they're setting a historic record over there in Mexico. And I said, really? I said, what's that on? He said, the number of 15-foot ladders that they're selling. And that was in reference to the 15-foot fence that was there. And by the way, on that fence, It's a 1.5 miles long. So we walked over to the edge. We lifted up a pole. We moved it aside, and we walked out on the other side of the fence, just to what somebody else would do that was going to cross the border there. It's like I said, it's a sieve, and I don't know how many hundreds of millions or billions they could put in, but they're not going to be able to shut that off with a fence or with it. They have to have some other kind of methodology, and that to me is local law enforcement. When I went to El Paso, the police chief down there said, "Senator, what's a senator from Indiana doing here? That what can he do for me?" And I said, "Well, hopefully with the commissions that I serve on, I can go back and I can tell your story, because believe me, everything that you can do down here to stop one bad guy from coming across is one less bad guy that's going to come in Indiana." And that's, obviously that's my main interest, is my own state and my own district, but it's a national thing. So,
but I think that's the important part when people criticize for you being involved with the Homeland Security on a national level. It does come back to Indiana. It does end up in our district.
I serve on what's called the Global Working Intelligence Group and the Counterintelligence Coordinating Council. And these are all the police agencies. These are the international chiefs of police. These are Interpol. This is the FBI, Secret Service, ATF, the major cities, sheriffs. All of these things I participate on. And when I was to D.C. a couple weeks ago, one of them came up to me, or there were a group of them, but the one said to me, he said, Senator Wyss, he said, "You can't believe how valuable you are to us about providing the perspective of the state and locals to us from a political sense, as well as understanding our issues. I serve on the privacy and civil liberties part of what we're doing with all the fusion centers. I'm on that committee that's establishing the standards, and I'm doing it based upon what I know I want as my civil liberties and what I want as protections." And it's just, and it's one of those things where I don't know whether I'm going to be any major part of the solution, but I feel like I'm just a little piece of it. And as long as I'm able to do that, and it's like I say, I've told somebody this in the past, I know I'm at the end of my life cycle. I hope I got some more years, but I know I'm there. And what I do and what I think about are my kids, my grandkids, your kids, your families, your grandkids. All of these things are what we should really be looking at as individuals. Again, not something that benefits me. It does in a sense, but it's benefiting the future of my country and my city and my state.